Hey, I don't know if you realize this or not, but God's grace shows up in our life in a lot of different ways. Sometimes we look at God's grace as only being his forgiveness, and that's one compartment of it, but God's grace has many sides. In fact, 1 Peter 4:10 tells us that we are to steward the manifold grace of God. In other words, that there are many sides to God's grace that we're to steward. One of the ways that God's grace shows up in our life is in the area of responsibilities that we have. In other words, if there's a responsibility that you or I have in our life, then likely God has graced us. His hand of favor is on our life to accomplish that. We see of Jesus in Luke 2:52, where it says that Jesus grew in wisdom, godly character, and favor. What kind of favor? What does that mean? It doesn't mean that we get preferential treatment necessarily, but what it does mean is that God's hand of grace is on our life to steward a responsibility or to steward an opportunity, which means that if you're a parent, God has graced you to be a parent. If you're a business owner, God has graced you and his hand is on your life to do that. Anywhere there is a responsibility that we have, it is an opportunity for God's hand of blessing, his hand of favor, his grace to show up in our lives to accomplish whatever it is that we need to accomplish. Sometimes we feel like there's a lot of friction in an area, and wherever that responsibility or that friction is showing up, we often will say things like, I don't know that I have the grace to deal with this relationship or the grace to deal with this situation or this task or this job anymore. I feel like the grace is I'm just not graced for it. And a lot of times grace begins to evaporate in our lives when humility is low. In other words, when our pride begins to rise in any area of our life, then grace begins to decrease because God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And so if you're finding yourself in a place where there's a lot of friction, I would encourage you to check your heart and say, God, where am I walking in pride or arrogance? And then humble yourself. And as you humble yourself, God's grace will begin to show up again. And you will see his favor, his grace on your life to accomplish all that you need to accomplish today, tomorrow, and in the weeks to come. Remember, God's grace is on your life, which means you have the power of God, the ability of God, the favor of God operating in your life. So steward it well in a God-honoring way. Hey, that's it for me. I hope this has helped you have faith for today. We'll talk to you soon.